How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the Black Metal Rebellion. I'm your host, Jesse Morgan, aka Slammerella, and today we have some more black metal review to do, and that is the third album by Ouija. They are a black metal band straight out of Spain that started in 1995. Their new album, Fathomless Hysteros, was released December 26th of last year in 2022. But before this album, they also released a few things, that being their first album, Riding into the Funeral Paths. Check it out right here, 1997. After that, they took a bit of a break and then came out with their first EP called the Adversary EP in 2010. Then moving right along into their second album in 2013, they have Av Voluptatis Carnis. They also came out with Selenophile Impia. Check out my review playlist to get my further in-depth thoughts on that EP. And with that house cleaning out of the way, let's get on to the members of this band. That being Midgard on vocals, Map on guitar, JM101 also on guitar, Shogoth on bass, and Fulgur on drums. Alright, so with the third album, Fathomless Hysteros, I found the vocals were about mid-range in mix, not too high, not too low, and pretty much on par with the vocals. The performance was consistent throughout the album, and if you want to know about the style of the vocals, you could expect a gravelly, wet, throaty type of growl, mostly middle range. Again, not too high, not too low. But there are also some rare instances of some clean shouting, sort of in the Viking style. So if you listen to Amon Amarth, some of their kind of chanty, shouting type of clean vocals, that's what you'll probably expect in this. More noticeably in the track, The Fifth Rider. Alright, moving on now to the guitars on the Fathomless Hysteros album. We're also looking at a middle-of-the-road mix when it comes to where they are in the EQ. They are fairly well balanced, they are clear and pretty discernible, so you can make out every little thing that the guitarist is doing for the most part. I'd say the album has a fairly consistent performance throughout, minus possibly one or two hiccups. I'm not quite sure whether it was a style choice or just my ears not picking it up right. But in the song, I See You Without Eyes, there's a little bit of a misstepped execution of a strum or two or pluck in there. Again, it might have just been a stylistic choice, but I feel like there might have been a little bit of a hiccup there. And there was some issues, possibly, again, I'm not sure if it's my ears or if it was an actual mistake there, but a little bit of off timing with the drums when it came to the guitaring on a couple of parts there. But mostly a really good performance overall. As for the stylings and what kind of things you can expect from the guitar in this album, you can mostly just expect your basic black metal tremolos and some layered guitar parts, which ends up giving a really wall of sound, atmospheric feel for the most part. There's also some neat slow melodic solos here and there, and there's also some brief moody folk licks going on. So there is a bit of variety here and there, but mostly they had a very specific sound they're going for in this album guitar wise. Think of maybe some Dimmu Borgir without the symphonic part. Moving on to, unfortunately, not too much when it comes to the bass. Shogoth's bass wasn't really all that apparent and present when it came to the mix for this album. I feel like it did add a bit of a background hum and a little bit of a bass boost in general, but if you were to ask me to pick out particular parts here and there in each song, I really couldn't tell you. It was pretty hard to pick up what particular was the bass parts, so unfortunately I can't go too much into depth on that. However, I can tell you about the drums. They were good in the mix and well balanced. not too overpowering and wasn't too buried. And I'd say each song is performed with equal effort and precision. As to what to expect on there drum-wise, you could expect a pretty good snare tone, but could be slightly louder here and there. Some parts there was a pretty well pronounced snare, but when it came to a lot of the blast beats and stuff like that, it was a bit quiet. As for the kicks, they were mostly punchy and thuddy and low. Fulgur definitely took advantage of his ability for fills. He had some great atmospheric cymbal work. He was certainly not lacking in the speed department. He had some really quick rides going on there throughout, and of course executing some excellent blast beats and even some interesting transition and beat combos for the slower parts of this album, namely I See You Without Eyes. Alright, with that being said, let's move on to my favorite tracks. Okay, now with a little bit of a lighting change in here, let's get on to the favorite tracks. The fourth track on here, which is called The Fifth Rider, is probably my favorite track on here in general, and it's because it has a very grim Viking siege feel throughout. It has a slight change up from the first two tracks on the album, and I just liked it in general. It had a really cool vibe to it. The fifth track on the album, Hijo del Kaido, was also a really nice track to pretty much finish off the last of the original material for this album. I'll explain that comment a little bit later, but yes, this one takes what came before and kind of adds some brief changes of pace here and there, but it definitely has its own flavor amongst the 5 original tracks that are on this album. And my third favorite track on this album is track number 3, I See You Without Eyes. Now, despite the interesting hiccups that I possibly noticed in this was also worth mentioning as a track to watch out for, as I See You Without Eyes sees the band slowing down quite a bit as opposed to the tracks that came before it and a little bit after it. It is the slowest song, but I feel the drums get to shine a lot more, and a lot more of the band's personality gets to come out in the song, and they definitely bring forth a more creative effort since they are forced to slow down and feel out the rest of the track. Alright, so getting on to what I was talking about when it comes to the original material on this album, the 6th and 7th track on Fathomless Hysteros is Adversary, which is track 6. Adversary is a re-recording from their second album, Av Voluptatis Carnis, and track number 7, Unbridled Transylvanian Passion, is a recording from their first album, Riding into the Funeral Paths. Now, both of these tracks are outstanding when it comes to the rest of the material on this album. They're definitely the shining stars and showcase some of Ouija's better material and more energetic flair. So I don't really want to include these as official entries on their album. However, if you don't include Adversary and Unbridled Transylvanian Passion, the album technically it comes in at 28 minutes in length, and with the 2 bonus tracks, it comes in at 40 minutes in length. So a full official album with 40 minutes and kind of just a really long mini LP with 28 minutes with the 5 tracks of original material. So yeah, when I am reviewing this album as a whole, I am only considering the first 5 tracks, as the 6th and 7th are just re-recordings of old album stuff. So keep that in mind when I include the score and what I talk about when it comes to weaknesses, improvements after my overall thoughts. So what were my overall thoughts? Well, Ouija's return sees a barrage of dark riffs and billowing plumes of atmosphere. There's no sunlight or happiness to be found in this album. Now, despite their blistering tremolos and sorrowful riffs, I feel that Ouija are at their best when not relying on speed and walls of atmosphere. I definitely enjoy when they start slowing things down and start branching out with their variety of riffs and tempos and beats. So that being said, let's get on to my improvements or weaknesses for this album. First of all, The vocal diversity is usually a thing that I pick on any band if they're only using one main type of style. So with this, I would like to see higher vocals, maybe more shrieky demonic vocals in the future, or on the other end, maybe more gargly, demented, low, growly type of stuff. Doesn't have to necessarily go into like the super brutal death metal or slam style of like lows, but maybe something a little bit lower than the main mid tone that's present in this album. A second thing that I think would help this project a little more, even though yes, it's black metal and we don't really give a shit about the bass when it comes to black metal, but I would personally enjoy a more discernible bass sound, even if it's giving a couple of seconds to shine here and there throughout the song where the guitars do nothing and you can hear what the bass specifically sounds like, just so that reviewers like myself can be like, oh, that's what the bass is sounding like, and then I can pick it up throughout the rest of the album and really give my proper thoughts on it and give the bassist some, you know, something to compliment or talk about there. All right, and another thing that I noticed about the original material on this album, I felt like it could use a little bit more riff style variety instead of the first two tracks kind of tremolo, atmospheric riff repeat cycle that was going on. And it's another reason why I really liked I See You Without Eyes. It had a lot more going on in it instead of just tremolo, 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 blast beat, blast beat, blast beat, atmosphere, atmosphere, atmosphere. It, after a while, it kind of gets repetitive and samey. So yeah, despite the speed and complexity, I felt this kind of made a bit of the albums kind of feel slow and a little bit boring here and there, even though, again, a lot of tremolos and blast beats were happening and a lot of atmosphere and craziness was happening, but I just felt like the more that happened, the less intriguing it was. And the last point on this part of the review is that I feel like the runtime was filled with re-recordings of old material instead of new material to make it a full-length album. I don't know what the decision was there to add those extra tracks. Was it to fill out the album length to make it a full-length album, aka 30 minutes or over? Or was it just a creative decision where the band members really like those songs from the old albums and decide to throw it on anyway? I'm not sure, but I feel like, although I'm glad to have the re-recordings of these old songs because they are really good, I feel that the greatness of those songs took away from the original material that was presented in the album. Maybe a song or two added on to this that was original material would have really made it a solid full-length third album that didn't need to be filled out with extra bonus tracks from previous years. With that being said, and everything considered, I'm still going to give Ouija's Fathomless Hysteros third album a solid 7 out of 10. Even though I felt there was a couple of things that could have been improved and a couple of weaknesses here and there in the album, I still feel for those that really like that just simplistic black metal sound with tremolos and atmosphere with that grim, dark, sorrowful mood in it, you will probably really enjoy that kind of black metal in this album. Let me know what you think when you hear it, because I would like to hear your opinions, because as someone who's more into black metal that has more groove in it, more thrash in it, more venomous vocals, a little more angry, a little more head bobbingness to it, I'm not really into the really depressive, dark, gloomy, atmospheric type of black metal anymore. So I don't feel like I am giving Ouija's new album the best impression here because of my own specific tastes, but I do feel like you watching out there who are into that type of thing will probably really dig this. And with that being said, also let me know how you feel about the 5 new tracks on here versus the 2 remastered and re-recorded stuff from the previous 2 albums. Let me know how you feel that contrasts to the new material, and let me know if you feel like it should have been left off in some more original material added, or if you're perfectly fine with how they decided to couple it with the new album. Anywho, that's it. Hope you enjoyed this review. Go check out Ouija's Fathomless Hysteros and decide for yourself whether it's worthy of buying or not, and I'll see you in the next video. For glory, for the rebellion, Slimerella out.